I'm David Scandura,
I'm Justice Burkett.
and today we're here to find out is Evil Dead 2 the greatest movie ever made?
Dead by dawn.
Dead by dawn!
Dead by dawn. Dead by dawn.
Dead by dawn!
Welcome to the greatest movie ever made, the show where we watch a movie and tell you why it's the greatest movie ever made.
Why it's the greatest movie ever made? Not if
If it's the greatest movie ever made. I don't know. I don't want to show my hand too early,
usually
I guess.
we tell you if it's the greatest movie ever made. I think on this episode we're more telling you why it's the greatest movie ever
Yeah,
made.
we'll see.
Did you do the intro as Jake from this movie? That's his name, right? Jake? Bobby Joe's man.
I think it was unconsciously I did it as Jake. It wasn't my intention. I just opened my mouth and redneck voice came out.
Yes, yeah, because we do have a couple rednecks in this one. Notably absent from Evil Dead 1 is people doing dip and spitting a bunch. Also, Jake's like the sweaty. I think his name's Jake, right?
Yeah, it's Jake.
Yeah, okay. He is the sweatiest man of all time. Like, he's so fucking sweaty in this whole. Well, except for Ted Raimi, who on the set of this was the actual sweatiest man of all time. You've heard the stories about how Greg Nicotero had to bail out his fucking latex suit with little Dixie cups of sweat to keep it from pooling in there. Fucking gnarly as hell, man.
Yeah. Sam Raimi not only loves torturing Bruce Campbell, he also likes giving his brother heat stroke.
I mean, who doesn't like pulling a little prank on their younger brother? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We both have younger brothers. Sometimes it's fun to put your little brother in a huge, uncomfortable latex suit for your low-budget horror movie and make him almost die of heat exhaustion.
I didn't even finish the rest of the intro, but you know what? It's a movie that's so thoroughly entertaining and compelling that while you're watching it, it's the only thing that matters in the world.
Yep.
The Halloween Horrorthon 2. Dead by Dawn.
Dead by dawn.
Dead by Dawn.
Dead by dawn.
Dead by Dawn continues with Evil Dead 2,
Yeah.
directed by Sam Raimi.
Yes.
Our first repeat director, which I think for a while, at least me, I was sort of like, let's hold off on doing too many repeats of actors and directors, and then we just decided to kind of open the floodgates with this one.
Yeah, I mean, Raimi's not a bad one to repeat because a lot of his filmography is very different, right? It's not like talking about two Sam Raimi movies means you're going to be talking about the same type of movie too close together, you know? Because he's got like his baseball romance movie starring Kevin Costner, and he's got his crime movie, and he's got his horror movies and his superhero movies. Like he's kind of all over the map.
He's got a Western. He's got Quick and the Dead. I've always wanted to see that.
Yeah, it's supposed to be real good. I haven't seen it either.
Yeah. And the thing about Raimi is, I think the philosophy of filmmaking that he established on the first Evil Dead carries over to most of his movies. I mean, there's definitely ones like, I'm assuming his baseball romance movie, he's not going full balls to the wall, Sam Raimi craziness.
The camera isn't going through the windows of a Pontiac to see the couple having their little heart-to-heart or whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure a baseball catcher's mitt doesn't come to life and try to kill anyone in those.
Yeah, I wonder how many human skulls appear in For the Love of the Game. I'm guessing 0.
For a lot of his movies, the tricks and everything that he pioneered on Evil Dead, and his whole philosophy and approach to filmmaking on Evil Dead carries over into his other movies.
Yeah, totally. I heard it once described, and I don't remember if this came from him or if it came from somewhere else, but I heard it described one time as like he just treats the camera like an object, right? As opposed to the camera being a passive observation point. In his movies, the camera's like an object. He throws it around.
Yeah.
He moves it with the action in a very interesting way because he's like, this is more than a lot of other filmmakers, at least of his time in the 80s. It seems like he was like one of the earliest to latch on to like, hey, this is a thing that I can carry around and move around and like do weird shit with, you know? And like that is fully on display in the Evil Dead movies, and like it's really where you see him learning that and playing with it and experimenting with it. And then you'll see like stuff that he learns in Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. And I know Crime Wave was in between those two, which I haven't seen. But like you'll see him take those camera tricks and then just apply them to later efforts and be like, oh yeah, here, remember when I put the camera in the bottom of the sink in Evil Dead 2? Here's that again, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or
I'll do the Evil Dead vision sort of for like the hospital scene in Spider-Man 2 and shit like that.
Yeah.
I think there's a criticism that's thrown around a lot of like a movie prioritizing visuals over storytelling.
Yeah.
And while I certainly think that criticism can be applied to some movies, I think it's also like sort of hollow and misses the point of like film is a visual medium.
Yeah.
The visuals are the story.
Correct. Yes.
And I think Raimi understands that with like, okay, if we just wanted to have a camera be static and do these really flat and boring shots, it might as well just be a play.
Right.
Like
then read a book,
right?
Bitch.
Yeah. This is, I'm doing something unique and different here, and we're playing in the realm of film. So much of this movie is driven by just visuals and performance and like physical performance,
right?
And effects that it's like, yeah, throw the camera around, make it fun, make it interesting, do something creative with it.
Yeah. Yeah, the older I get, the because when I was younger in my life and also my life as an appreciator of the medium of film, I was kind of I fucking found a plot hole I could drive a truck through ass bitch. In a way, right? I was like a little bit like, oh, continuity and the story arc and yeah. And the older I get, the less I give a shit about any of that stuff. I feel like, and potentially the more mature I get as a film fan too, where I'm just like, I kind of don't care about the story a lot of the time, and it's not like, I don't mean to say that like when a movie suffers in that department, it's like goes unnoticed by me, because it definitely like there's definitely movies where that's a problem, but it's like less the thing that I'm honing in on, where it's like, oh, like what is this trying to say? And it's like, I just kind of want to see what this movie's deal is.
Yeah.
And Sam Raimi is like such an important filmmaker for me, because I feel like the first Evil Dead was one of the first movies where I really kind of like latched onto that and was like, oh, I kind of don't give a shit that this movie is basically just a bunch of doomed teenagers getting killed by demons again, right? It's like the way it's doing it is the point. What are the themes of the Evil Dead movies? The theme is fucking beating the shit out of Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
In the most creative way possible. And it's like, that's okay. And the movie knows that it is that and just wants you to accept it in that way. And I'm just like, that's beautiful. And it really kind of like enlightened me as a film fan to kind of get into Raimi's movies and Evil Dead 1 and 2 in particular. Because it was kind of the first time that I had been like, oh, it's okay that I like have seen this type of story before and that it's derivative. The point of the derivative story is to give me an entry point to see all the other fun shit that he's doing. You know?
I think the first Evil Dead is important to the 80s horror in terms of gore effects and energy and pacing and tone. It's as important as I think Halloween is. And I think Evil Dead 2 is a good showcase of, now we're several years into the 80s.
Yes.
Raimi several years removed from that first Evil Dead.
Dino De Laurentiis gave us $3.5 million.
It's like we have some money. Let's
Dino De Laurentiis gave them $3.5 million. Sorry to interrupt you. Because Stephen King, who was working with Dino De Laurentiis on Maximum Overdrive, liked Evil Dead 1 so much, that's why Evil Dead 2 got made.
Yeah, I mean,
because Stephen King was like, I really like that first movie. I want to give these boys another shot. Hey, Dino, you know how you and I are doing blow literally 8 hours a day and making Maximum Overdrive? Throw those guys $3.5 million.
You know how we're making a movie about killer trucks soundtracked to AC/DC?
Stephen King has said he literally doesn't remember making that movie, which I think is so fucking funny. Like, not that Stephen King's struggle with addiction is funny, because like he has been very open about how that had negative impacts on his life.
The creative output of coked out 80s Stephen King is very funny.
Yes, yeah. It's only funny because he survived it and he's been like open and honest with himself and with us about it. But I mean, the guy was just blowing fucking rails.
the fact that he wrote it and decided to make a major plot point of that book be an underage orgy.
Yeah, then these 12-year-olds all have an orgy. But there's only one girl, so really it's a little bit more like a bukkake situation.
I'm Stephen King. I'm the greatest horror writer of all time, you fucking bastards. Like, that's
I've been
funny
looking at a lot
as
of
shit.
magazines from Japan. You guys heard of snowballing? It's gonna be all the rage in 20 years.
Anyway, yeah, this is just like Raimi. Like, let's just do that one again, but better.
Yeah.
And it's we'll get into it.
Yeah.
I haven't asked you how you're doing.
No, I don't even. Did you even introduce us? Did you even say that you're David Scandura, joined as always by your co-host and
some funny thing? Just
Right.
no, I didn't.
Cellar Witch Justice Burkett. Anyway, no, yeah. How are you doing? I guess since I did your intro.
I'm sleepy. I'm EP sleepy.
Yeah.
We were up late last night watching Terrifier 3.
We were.
And I ended up staying up even later to like 2 o'clock in the morning. And
You stupid bitch.
I had to play Ghost Recon.
Yeah.
Brock Thunderguns had to take out the cartel.
Fair enough. I went to bed.
So I like went back to sleep at some point today. And I kept having it was not a restful sleep. It was like I'm having dreams within dreams, and I'm dreaming about being in bed asleep and getting texts from you.
Yeah.
So when I would wake up and actually get texts from you, it was like, I don't know what plane of existence I'm on right now.
Yeah. What was Leonardo DiCaprio and co trying to get out of your subconscious, do you think? With all those dreams within dreams. What fake text was the Inception crew sending you?
They were sending me fake texts about delaying the podcast recording.
Which is what I was actually
Which is what
texting
you were
about.
doing. So I would wake up and be like, oh, thank God, he's delaying the podcast recording. I'm going back to sleep again.
Yeah.
Which is why we're recording this much later than usual.
Yeah. It feels appropriate, though, to do Evil Dead 2 after dark, I think.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'm doing good.
Good.
You know, nice week. Your media recommendation for the week is Cool World by Chatpile.
Of course it is. Stream Cool World by Chatpile. It's
Okay.
great. Yeah.
How are you doing, and what do you think my media recommendation for the week is?
Your media recommendation for the week is Terrifier 3.
No.
Oh, it's not. Wait, hold on. What else would it be? Hold on. I'm thinking. Did you see another movie? Is it another movie?
It's another movie.
Okay.
It's another movie that we both watched that's very gory and, like Terrifier 3, is not technically speaking a good movie.
Why am I like blanking on what we watched last week all of a sudden? I'm also weepy sleepy.
I feel like I feel like this would be really easy.
It is, and apparently my brain is just soup, and I've like forgotten when we watched everything that we. Oh, it's Repo the Genetic
You
Opera.
bet your ass.
Sorry, I forgot that Zydrate comes in a little glass vial.
Yeah, I listened to the soundtrack like 4 times this week.
Sorry, it feels like that was 15 years ago.
I guess so.
I had a long week.
Yeah.
But not a bad week, just a long week. I just feel like it was like a lot of shit early in the week, and then like Thursday, Friday, it feels like I was like recuperating from the week while still in the week. You know what I'm saying? But yes, we did have a fun time watching Repo the Genetic Opera last week. And of course, as you said before, my media recommendation is Chatpile's new album, Cool World. Stream Cool World.
Yeah.
I Am Dog Now, etc.
I Am Dog Now. I haven't listened to it yet.
It's good. It's real good. It's an interesting sonic evolution for the band while still playing very much to their established strengths. And as a big fan of them, I am very happy about both of those things.
Do they do a country
really
song on it?
No, there's no country song. They do. Raygun Bush is experimenting with his vocal range
Mm-hmm.
in a very interesting way, because anyone who's a fan of the band, he does like guttural stuff. He does kind of like primal squeals and stuff.
He's experimenting with incoherent babbling.
But here's the thing.
That's his vocal
But
range.
here's the thing. He's like doing more actual death growl and black metal shriek technique on Cool World, while the main vocal delivery mode is still like his classic Raygun Bush thing, and it really, really fucking hits for me. Where it's like he'll layer the lyrics where it's like the main one that's like in the foreground is just his like Ray Gun Bush mumble scream thing. And then there's like a black metal line like over it, but like way buried in the mix. And it's like, oh, that's fucking really good. It's cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. Anyway.
Evil Dead 2.
Evil Dead 2.
Back to Evil Dead 2.
Back to Evil Dead
This
2.
is going to be probably a loosey-goosey
Yeah, I mean,
episode. It's a pretty straightforward movie.
yeah. What happens in Evil Dead 2 is, you know, the Book of the Dead is read, and a bunch of demons come and fuck everyone's shit up. It's what happens in every Evil Dead movie.
Yeah.
Except for Army of Darkness, which is its own thing.
Mhm.
That one doesn't really have, like, read from the Book of the Dead, a bunch of Deadites come and fuck people's shit up. Do they even read from the Book of the Dead?
There is the Book of the Dead in that one.
I mean, they read from it to, like, send Ash back to the future. But I don't think that's how the Deadites show up. Like, the Deadites
I think
are
the
just
Deadites already there. Yeah,
Yeah.
but there
Anyway.
are different like Books of the Dead in that one.
Yeah.
That
That one's the outlier.
That's the outlier. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
What's your experience? What's your history with this franchise? I know you talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Because this is not my first time with this movie either.
Right.
But I think our experiences and our history is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, so the first Evil Dead movie I ever saw was Army of Darkness when I was like a young teenager, because that's the one they can air on TV. So that's the one I saw. Like, I saw Army of Darkness because I think Army of Darkness is only PG-13. I don't even think that one's an R-rated movie. And if it is R, it's like editable for TV.
Yeah, it's not particularly gory.
Yes. So that is actually the one I saw first. I caught it on TV, like, I think a couple times. And I, like, really fucked with it. I was like, oh, this is, like, very fun and cool and goofy. And then when I got into being a horror fan, sort of, like, late to post college, late college to early post-college years of my life, when I got really into, like, just like, okay, now I've latched onto horror as a genre, I want to explore it as much as possible. That is when Evil Dead 1981, the OG, came up, because I had heard a lot about Evil Dead 1 and 2, and I knew they were related to Army of Darkness, that movie that I had seen before, but I didn't start with 2, even though I had heard you can start with 2, because I just wanted to see the first one first. So sat down and watched Evil Dead 1981 with High Priestess Pod as one of our, like, early, like, we're just watching horror movies films that we explored together, and fucking immediately, instantly, it was one of my favorite movies of all time. This movie that Sam Raimi dropped out of college to make, and just like him and his fucking elementary school pal Bruce Campbell, who he made Super 8 movies with, and his little brother Ted, right, like, got together and fucking shot this shit in the woods. It immediately was just like, I fucking vibrate on the exact same wavelength as Evil Dead 1981, because it feels like it was, like, made by my high school friends. You know, it feels like the kind of movie that would come from the type of DIY indie creative spirit that I myself have experienced and been a part of and, like, orbited in the circles of, right? It was instantly recognizable to me as, like, yeah, like, kind of shitheel, white upper middle class, rural to suburban kids acting out in the same way that, like, the DC punk scene is, right? Like, that's how it felt to me, where I was like, okay, yeah, these guys are making, like, transgressive art as an act of rebellion and, like, extreme creative expression, you know, is how that movie feels to me. And also, it introduces the Deadites, which are my favorite horror monster possibly, because they take everything that is great about zombies and demons and smashes them together, but then they introduce their own little kind of take on the whole thing. The thing that I love about Deadites, that I love so much more than any other depiction of demons in movies, is they're just having such a fucking fun time all the time.
Well, they're the surrogates for the horror audience.
Exactly.
They're cheering
They're
on
us.
and chanting and watching
Right.
our heroes get, torn apart.
Right, the Deadites are us. We are the Deadites. And in the first movie, they, like, immediately get that right. You know, it doesn't take until Evil Dead 2 for them to cement that. It's there in the first one, right? Where the Deadites are just fucking little stinkers. They're just fucking with Bruce Campbell, like fucking his whole shit up and laughing at him and making jokes at his expense. And in this movie, it like continues, right? So like I saw that movie, loved it for all those reasons. Saw this one, liked it less, and I had heard that Evil Dead 2 was the better one. But I still fucking loved it, and I've gone back to Evil Dead 1 and 2 since seeing them that first time. So I've seen each of these movies multiple times. I'm not sure the exact number, but probably less than half a dozen each.
Okay.
And Army of Darkness I actually haven't revisited in the longest. It's probably been like a solid 10 years since I've seen Army of Darkness. And then I also really like Fede Alvarez's 2013 remake of Evil Dead, a movie that we'll probably eventually do on this podcast because it's fucking bananas. I fucking love that remake. I don't like it as much as the original, but it's probably my favorite horror remake. And then I even really fucked with Evil Dead Rise.
We both liked Evil Dead Rise.
Yeah, so I think that Evil Dead is the rare horror film franchise that has gotten to 5 entries, where I think all 5 are good.
Yeah.
If I was going to rank them, I would probably do 1, 2, remake, Rise, Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
Is probably my rank.
I think a lot of people have a nostalgia for whatever the first Evil Dead movie they saw was.
Right.
Like, I think that, like, there are people who are huge Army of Darkness fans because they saw Army of Darkness first.
Yeah.
And then that goes, at least for that original trilogy, quote unquote. So, yeah, I mean, my history with this thing, which you didn't ask me.
No,
but
but
I just figured you were done.
I'm done and it's your turn.
So there's a lot of movies that we will cover eventually on this podcast that I came to for different reasons than one might expect. Like, I came to like a lot of John Carpenter's movies because I heard Escape from New York and Big Trouble in Little China were action, like great action movies, not necessarily John Carpenter movies. That's what happened with Evil Dead. In high school, I got into zombie movies.
Right.
I got into zombie movies like crazy.
Yeah.
And I had this foolish ambition to try to watch every zombie movie that had ever been made that I could find with, mid 2000s internet connection.
And a Pirate Bay bookmark.
Yeah. So I came to Evil Dead as zombie movies.
Yeah. Which they are, but I would argue they're more demon movies than zombie movies.
And I hated them.
You fucking idiot.
So
I understand if you're looking for a good zombie movie.
Hated is a strong word. The first movie, I just didn't get it.
Right.
I thought the effects were like really amateurish.
Yeah. It's...
The tone was really weird to me. By the time I got to the second one, I liked the second one better because, I mean, you got K&B doing the effects. So they look a lot better. It's a lot... the tone, the comedic tone is a lot more brought to the forefront.
Yes.
Not that the first one isn't funny, because it is.
But the dark comedy is more clearly and explicitly centered in the second.
Yeah. But I was, I was a lot more impressed with this one. And then Army of Darkness was just, it was okay. It was fun, but it was kind of like... too much of a good thing. Yeah. And that's kind of how I felt about it the last time I watched it.
That's sort of how I still feel about that one now.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, okay, I'm starting to see a little bit of Sam Raimi's occasional influence that'll peek its head in, stuff like Spider-Man 3, right? Where it's like, all right, like sometimes if he leans too far into the whole thing, it's like, all right, now this is just goofy. And I feel like it's less like goofy in a way I'm vibing with, and it's more goofy in a way where I'm like, all right, like let's cut to the fucking chase here. Like,
And it's weird looking back that I latched onto Romero so heavily, because Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead both have fairly amateurish effects for the time.
Yep.
And occasionally, especially Dawn of the Dead, which I rewatched recently, occasionally are a little goofy and a little silly. It's weird that, like, I really fucked with those and I got to Evil Dead and I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm watching here. But I went back to all of the Evil Dead movies for the first time last year when Evil Dead Rise came out.
Yeah.
and had a much better time because I wasn't a fucking idiot anymore like I was in high school.
Because you weren't like, I'm rating this movie directly against George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead.
Tom Savini didn't do the gore effects, and therefore I hate all this clay stop motion bullshit.
I have established 7 categories to rate zombie movies, and Evil Dead ranks a 1 in 6 of those 7 categories.
I sort of did that. I
Yeah.
sort of did that. I was like, the only good zombie movies have slow zombies
Right.
unless you're called 28 Days Later.
Right. But they're not zombies. They're demons. They're the
Right.
Evil Dead.
Right.
It's its own
It's
thing.
its own thing, and I
Yeah.
didn't get that at the time.
Right, yeah.
And then, so last year was my first time going through the movies again, my first time seeing the Fede Alvarez movie, which
Yeah.
I also severely fuck with
That movie
and
rips.
cannot wait to watch
It
again.
rips, it fucks, it owns. It's so good.
But the reason I picked this one is I think I have a good handle on my opinions on all of the movies.
Yeah.
Except for this one. And to be clear, I do like this one a lot.
Yeah.
But the first one is so pioneering in so many ways. Army of Darkness is Army of Darkness. It's always kind of going to be the worst one for me.
Yeah.
It's a little bit too much of a good thing. The remake is just like balls to the wall, heavy metal, rad as hell. And then Rise, it's a newer one. But this is like in a bit of a weird spot for me because there's a few different movements to this movie,
Mhm.
and some of those are my favorite stuff in the Evil Dead franchise, and
Yeah.
some of them are not, I don't like as much.
Yeah, I'm sort of there with you, which is why, even though this movie contains like minimum 3 moments that I think are like probably top 3 moments in any Evil Dead movie ever, this is still below the first one on my ranking.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this movie, its highs are the highest that this franchise has ever gotten. And then there's moments where I'm like, kind of would be rather watching Evil Dead 1981.
Yeah, and it's kind of, it is just kind of doing the first one again.
Right.
And that's fine, and that's fun, and there's tons
literally
of, like,
for the first 7 minutes, by
Yeah,
the way.
yeah,
They
absolutely.
literally remake the first movie in the first 7 minutes of this movie.
and there were parts where I was watching this, and I was like, okay, now that we're onto this part of the movie that I don't quite like as much as these other parts,
Uh-huh.
I'm like, I kind of wish I was watching the first one. I kind of wish I was watching 2013. I kind of wish I was watching Peter Jackson's Brain Dead,
Oh, man.
which is probably the actual best Evil Dead movie.
Yeah.
It's kind of a better Evil Dead movie than any of the Evil Dead movies, in my opinion.
It would be hard. It would be like picking a favorite child for me to pick between Evil Dead 1981 and Peter Jackson's Brain Dead. My answer might vary from day to day or even just like fancy to fancy on that.
Yeah.
Like if you ask me while I was in a different mood, I might have a different answer for you between those two movies, because I fucking absolutely adore both of those films. And you're right, Brain Dead is very much like the Evil Dead movie that doesn't have Evil Dead in the title.
Yeah.
It's,
I think Sam Raimi is like at one point was like heard about it and was very angry about it. and someone, I don't know, like,
it's like, what the fuck, some Kiwi made my movie?
someone was like interviewing Bruce Campbell and asked him about Brain Dead, and he was like, don't fucking mention that to Sam Raimi. He was like, don't bring up Brain Dead around Sam Raimi. He's pissed.
Yeah. That sort of tracks based on what I know about Sam Raimi, because as much as he's like sort of this DIY punk sort of counterculture filmmaker in a lot of ways, he also is like the guy who, since the very first time he stepped behind a director's camera, is always wearing a suit when he's on set and like takes himself like very seriously. And so I could see how some, scrappy filmmaker, scrappy up and coming filmmaker, like doing a similar idea to what he did in his like first scrappy DIY film, right, would rub him the wrong way. I could Sam Raimi seems not necessarily like a guy who fully ascribes to like pull yourself up by your own bootstraps mentality necessarily, but it does seem like he sort of has a chip on his shoulder about how hard he's had to work, to be respected. So, it tracks that he might be like, hey, fuck you, I made Evil Dead. Find your own thing. And, Peter Jackson kind of has a little stinker energy anyway, so.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
Did you know that Sam Raimi wanted to make The Hobbit? The Hobbit prequel movies to the Lord of the Rings. Apparently he was in conversation to do it, and then before Peter Jackson just ended up directing them himself, Sam Raimi was like expressing interest in interviews. He was like, that's what I would really like to do. And then like shortly after that, Guillermo del Toro was attached to direct, and Peter Jackson was executive producing. So I wonder if they have a beef. Like if Peter Jackson rememred
I don't know.
Sam Raimi was burned about Brain Dead.
I don't know
and was
how
like,
recent,
oh, he wants to make The Hobbit? Nah.
I don't know how recent that I don't know if Sam Raimi ever got over it or anything like that. I don't know how recent that is.
I wonder if they have beef.
I would probably much rather watch a Sam Raimi or definitely a Del Toro Hobbit.
Yeah.
I went back to those Hobbit movies
They're
recently
rough.
and
They're rough.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
It's like Lucas doing the prequels and it's like does he just not give a shit about movies anymore?
Yeah, it's rough. Those movies are interesting because it's not like they're irredeemable. They're just messes.
Yeah.
Like it's like there's some stuff in them where I'm like, oh, there's that Lord of the Rings magic. It's here in spots, in little morsels, and then there's just a bunch of fucking soulless corporate CGI sludge all over the place.
There's like a great 3.5 hour movie buried somewhere in that 8.5
Which is what
hour
it should have
mess.
been. I'm sorry, it's a children's book that is like a quarter of the length of the ones that he adapted into 3 individual feature-length films. It's like that shit has no business being 3 movies long.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we're not talking about The Hobbit.
We're not here to relitigate The Hobbit.
So, Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, which is the title it was marketed as.
Dead by Dawn.
Because I wasn't sure about this.
Yeah.
The marketing materials refer to it as Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn.
Dead by Dawn, yes.
But it's actually just called Evil Dead 2.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
We open with Previously on Evil Dead.
We open before Previously on Evil Dead. We open with a stop motion opening that is basically narration of what you would normally get in a title crawl, but there is no title crawl, right? So like the very first thing in the movie is this like stop motion like Book of the Dead flies at the screen through fog, and this narrator's like, the Book of the Dead, and explains to you what the Necronomicon ex mortis, and explains to you all that shit. And I really like this stop motion opening. I feel like it is very effective as a tone setter to let you know that this movie is going to be taking itself a little less seriously than Evil Dead 1981, right? Because it's like, here's this goofy stop motion and like this dramatic voiceover narration. It just seems to like give you an indicator, as opposed to like kind of the moody atmospheric opening credits of the first Evil Dead. That this is like, no, we're having fun here.
Yeah, and it's not the last time that this movie will use goofy stop motion.
This movie is full of goofy stop motion, and I love to see it.
How do you feel about this reshot sped through Previously an Evil Dead segment in the movie?
I sort of think it's good. Like,
yeah.
I don't mind that this movie just redoes the first movie in 7 minutes. And I understand why they did, right? Because the first Evil Dead, it was a commercial success compared to its budget, but it's not like the first Evil Dead was widely seen, you know? It was kind of a cult film.
Mm-hmm.
And so then this one had actual, real backing by Dino De Laurentiis, a bona fide Hollywood producer for better and worse. And so they were like, more people are going to see this one. We should just catch them up on what happened, I kind of think was the mentality here. And like, they do it in 7 minutes. It's really tight. I had misremembered this like Previously on Evil Dead thing being like a third of the movie. It's not. It is literally less than 10 minutes.
Yeah,
long.
you're in and out really quickly.
Yeah. And I kind of think it's good. I don't mind it. I think excluding Scott and what's her name from the first movie entirely and just focusing on Ash and Linda is a good choice, strong choice.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of like the first Evil Dead where it's a bunch of friends at a cabin, it's just them as a couple going to this little getaway at this cabin. Which, by the way, I do wonder why they're at this cabin. Because, okay, so we learn later that Annie is the main female character who enters the movie later. Her dad is studying the Necronomicon with his wife, Henrietta, at this cabin. And they have been in communication with Annie and her fucking student boyfriend, who's like the knockoff guy from John Carpenter's.
Yeah, his name is Ed.
Prince of Darkness. Ed, yes.
Yeah.
But Ed and Annie, Ed has been in communication with him while he's been doing this at this cabin. And when they land on the airstrip, as Ash is being fucked with by the Deadites, he says that he last heard from her dad a week ago because they don't have service at the cabin. So, a week ago, this guy was like, I booked this cabin. Me and my wife are going to go do research on this book there. They went there, and in less than a week, somebody rented this cabin out to Ash and Linda, who happened to show up after the professor got there and him and Henrietta died, but before Ed and Annie came back to check in with them about the book research.
Yeah.
The timeline is very strange.
Well, this movie doesn't really give a shit. It doesn't give a shit about continuity.
To be clear, I don't give a shit either. It is just odd.
Because I don't even remember the motivation for them going to the cabin in the first one, other than it's just like, I gotta know someone who's got a cabin for the weekend.
Yeah, I kind of even think they mentioned that maybe it's like Scott's uncle's cabin or some
like
shit.
a cousin or something.
Right.
But this opening, slightly remixing the first movie, I feel like it's fine because it kind of establishes that, there's a very light continuity running through this series.
Yeah.
But all of these movies are kind of their own thing. And even though this leads right into Army of Darkness, it's a full-on sequel tease ending. You could probably watch Army of Darkness, by itself.
Yeah.
And not really need to have a ton of backstory on the other movies. Although I like that this movie does give us a little bit more backstory on the Necronomicon, because it's it's briefly sketched here.
Yes.
But it's very briefly sketched in the first one.
Right. It's basically just like it's an evil book they find in the basement.
Yeah.
In the first one. And in the second one, it's like, okay, it's like, it's ancient, it's bound in human flesh and inked in human blood and all that stuff. And, like, there's demon shit inside. Which in the first one, I feel like you don't even get that much. It's basically like, here's a book with some weird words, and if you say them out loud, crazy shit happens.
Or play them on a tape.
Yeah. But yeah, like, I like the previously on Evil Dead bit at the beginning. Okay, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I also think that it is, like, it's very fun because I think it's utilitarian in a way, because Raimi and co. want to make sure that, like, their audience understands the setup for the movie that they're doing. But also, I think he was using it as just an excuse to show off how he's grown as a filmmaker, his bigger budget, and take a crack at some stuff that he wanted to, like, shoot again. Like Linda getting her head cut off by that shovel, which looks way better in 2 than in 1. And I'm like, he just wanted to do that again.
Yeah.
He was basically like, I understand in the first one that looked a little janky. Let's give me another shot at that one.
Well, and I really like he recreates the final shot from the last movie of the Evil Dead vision of the camera going through the back door of the cabin, through the front door, and then into Ash's face. Yeah. Just to, like, introduce this new element of the movie, which is zombie Ash. Or Deadite Ash.
Yes. This shot. So the Deadite cam is always amazing.
Yeah.
And you can look up how they did it. Like, a million podcasts have talked about it.
They literally just stuck a camera on a 2x4 and ran through the woods.
Right. And it's very fun. The effect is very cool. This shot specifically, where it goes through the cabin, the one later where it goes through the car is also fucking insane.
Yeah.
But this one where it goes through the cabin into Ash, and then it's like Bruce Campbell on the front of the camera, and then they speed it up, and he's like jerking around all crazy, is like literally genius. Like it is like such inventive filmmaking. It's crazy. This shot, and like so simple how they did it, but like so effective.
Yeah, this movie is a type of movie that I haven't really talked about yet, that I'm sure will come up later in the podcast as we continue to watch more movies and talk about them. This is a movie that will make you a better filmmaker regardless of what filmmaking knowledge you have previously.
Right.
Like there are some movies I think that if you take two people and give them both a movie camera and tell them to make a movie and they've never made a movie before, and you show one of them Evil Dead 2, that guy's going to make a better movie.
Yeah.
Because I think
right, it's a movie that teaches you how to make a movie.
As just as many times as there are effects in this movie that are like, that's so cool and inventive, I don't know how they did that. There are just as many effects that are very clear in how they were done. And sometimes it's because they look a little amateurish, but it also just is fun and charming and teaches you how to make a movie. So like this shot, it is like, okay, we got, a camera on a 2x4, and we probably have some strings tied up or someone behind these doors opening them in time to for the camera guys to run through.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens so many times in this movie, whether it's a stop motion effect, whether it's like a backdrop, like the broken like bridge.
Yes.
Like the hand.
Yes.
In one of those shots is just like, it's just like a flat piece of wood that they cut out and painted that way.
Yeah.
And it looks good.
The fucking demolished bridges effects are insane, because sometimes like in the wide shots it's a matte painting, and then there is just like painted wood or something that just looks like a hand where it's like fucking curled up and shit. They show it so many times that every single time I was like, this looks so iconic. No one has ever broken a bridge this way in a horror movie. Like, it is so singular.
Mm-hmm.
No bridge has ever been out more than this bridge, by the way. Like, it's so funny when later, like, Ed and Annie show up, and they're like, oh, yeah, like, can we get to the cabin? And Jake's like, nah, and he, like, turns on the headlights or whatever. And it's like, no, this bridge has been, obliterated by the forces of Satan. There's no other way to interpret what has happened here.
And even stuff like the model shots in this movie, there's so many times where the cabin is a model, or the when we're doing previously on Evil Dead, and Ash and his girlfriend are driving across the bridge.
That's what I was going to say. It's a miniature.
It's an incredible model shot.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it's just that I have a Blu-ray that's, nice and squeaky clean HD.
Yeah, me too.
You can tell it is, but it takes you a few seconds to be like...
And, in the words of Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice, it's a nice fucking model, honk honk. Like, it's a good model. It looks good. Sorry, I did the whole thing where I grabbed my nuts and it made David...
Yeah, that was... that was a little comfortable.
He says nice fucking model and grabs his nuts. I had to grab my nuts.
Okay, I guess so. If you want to grab your nuts, that's fine.
I'm not gonna grab your nuts. Don't worry.
I'm not gonna grab you.
It's it's a good model. Like the miniatures and stuff in this movie look good, even when you can tell that they are miniatures.
When it's daytime and Deadite Ash is like converting back into his human form, and they're doing like rewound shots of the smoke in the woods.
Yeah.
There's a close up on his eye of smoke in his eye, like it's a similar thing where it's like a rewound shot, and it's a brief shot. It's like less than a second, and it takes you about like halfway to get through that shot where you realize, oh, that's just a prop that they made.
Yeah.
To like this really, really like oversized close up of Bruce Campbell's head.
Yeah.
With the smoke in the eye. And it looks awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
This is why I appreciate this era of filmmaking so much, is the most minor things that you don't even think about are done with so much care and thought and creativity that you don't even necessarily think about that. Oh, I'm just seeing this, because
right.
I mean it's the difference between practical and CGI. With CGI, I think a lot of audiences are like, wow, it's so fantastic, and look at all of this and the colors and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then they look at an effect in Evil Dead or an effect in any other horror movie, and it doesn't click for them that they're looking at something real that was complex and took a lot of creativity to do.
Right.
Or even simple stuff like, great stunt driving, great stunt work. But, I don't know what it is, but I think people these days just aren't as into like, just that style of filmmaking, because you see it and you don't think about it.
Yeah.
You don't think about the work that went into it.
I agree with you. Speaking of great stunt work, let's talk about Bruce Campbell's performance. in
Let's
this
talk
movie.
about Maniac cop star
Beca-
Bruce Campbell.
Maniac cop mention. Maniac cop mention.
Because yeah, like Bruce Campbell is so like him and Sam Raimi were just childhood friends.
Yeah.
And Sam just started putting him in his movies because they were homies. And it's one of the universe's happiest accidents that Bruce Campbell was friends with an aspiring filmmaker and also just happened to be probably the best natural leading man that the horror genre has ever seen. Like, he's just... First of all, he looks like that. He just has the jaw.
Yeah.
And also, he... in this performance specifically, like in Evil Dead 2 specifically, although he also does a great job with the same character in 1 and 3. In 2 specifically, he is walking such a good line between like terrorized final girl. Ash Williams is like an honorary final girl.
Yeah, I mean, if horror has a final guy,
Yes,
it's Ash,
right?
and therefore he is a final girl.
Right. But and also like fucking action movie badass. And also it's just like there's just so much with him because he's also doing the whole Three Stooges slapstick thing the whole movie and fucking owning the shit out of it. But like anytime there's a close up of him that's supposed to communicate some like change in emotion or like he's reacting to a change in his circumstances or whatever, he's like not overdoing the acting, the facial acting part of his performance, despite it being like a really broad physically comedic performance. It's just it's really masterful work.
So I think first of all, he looks like that, like
Yes.
you said. He has this like classic all-American hero look where it's like, this guy could play like Superman.
Right. He looks like a caricature artist's version of a handsome man.
Right. But then he just stretches his face like it's made of Play-Doh.
Yeah.
And you're talking about walking that line. I don't think he's walking that line. I think he's playing jump rope with that line.
You're right. Yeah.
This is my favorite part of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite part of the movie is Bruce Campbell alone in this cabin for 25 or 30 minutes, just interacting with practical effects and throwing himself around this set.
Yes. The first half of the movie that is mostly this fucking rocks.
And I would argue the movie takes not a significant downturn, but starts taking a downturn when we bring in other characters.
I completely agree with that. I think this movie is at its best when it is the Bruce Campbell show. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, I think even more so than the first one and Army of Darkness, this is just, I don't think any actor has committed to a physical performance as hard as he does in this since like Buster Keaton.
So let's talk about some of this stuff, because like when he gets possessed, the sunlight burns his deadite infection away, and then hilariously he sleeps through most of the day and it's almost night again, which is very funny. That it's like, oh, the antidote to being possessed by a deadite is sunlight, and then he proceeds to snooze until sunset. He did have quite a night though, so I get it. I'm also very
this movie doesn't care about the Deadite rules. Like, it has very basically sketched out rules for Deadites.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to Ash, he just throws all those out the window. It's like if you're possessed by a Deadite, you can't come back unless your name is Bruce Campbell.
I kind of think the whole thing with all the Evil Dead movies is that the Deadites don't give a shit about rules, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes they follow them, sometimes they don't. And it's kind of because the point is, again, that the Deadites are the horror audience, right? So, like, when it serves the movie, the rules apply, and when it doesn't, we stop giving a shit because the audience shouldn't give a shit, you know? But anyway, so he is like this bit in the cabin. He starts being terrorized basically as soon as the sun goes down. And like the first thing is like Linda's corpse that he buried comes back to life and does the crazy stop motion ballet dancing where her head rolls up the hill and reattaches to her neck and everything. And it's like, it is very clearly stop motion, and it's also like really uncanny and weird and unsettling to watch.
Yeah, because it's like really smooth stop motion, but occasionally you get that jitter in there.
Yeah.
That throws it off a bit. Because I was feeling that too, where it's like, in terms of the way that this model looks physically, very clearly fake. But the way it's shot and the speed of the film is also like sort of off and kind of playing a bit of a like walking the line between being like a realistic and what you expect from stop motion.
Right. And it does sort of achieve that kind of nightmarish dreamlike quality, which I think really fucking works. And it's like a moment that's sort of funny but also kind of scary, which is a lot of this movie. And then so there's that whole bit, and I love that he sees her ballet dancing and he sees this fucking insane thing. His response is, "Oh man." And then for the first time potentially in this movie of what is approximately 6,000 times, something jumps screaming into frame. It happens so many times in this movie, and this movie is so full of jump scares that I think one of them will get almost anybody who watches this movie. This one wasn't the one for me, but so then like the head bites him here on his hand. He has like a battle with the head. It bites him. I love him fucking slamming this head into like everything in the cab. And then he goes out into the shed and puts the head in the vise. It does the thing where it like turns back from Deadite into regular Linda, which I fucking love when the Deadites do that shit. They don't do it enough in this movie. I really like
well, there aren't that many Deadites.
That's true. But I really like when the Deadites are like, "Oh, you wouldn't hurt me. I'm your best friend." And it's like, motherfucker, you had sharp teeth and crazy milky eyes and were spewing blood.
I'm talking to a decapitated head in a vice
and it's
now.
Like, Ash, please, no, we can work this out. It's like, I don't think it'll work out. You're literally don't have a body. I fucking love it's because it's doing the like pleading with him thing. He's not buying it. It turns back evil. I also love when the Deadites just say heinous shit to people, where it's like, "Your Linda's in hell, fucking sucking dicks," or whatever it says to him. And one of my favorites of that, by the way, is in Evil Dead Rise, where the possessed mom says to the sister, open that door like you opened your legs, you stinking groupie slut."
I like Mommies with the Maggots now. That was in the trailer a lot.
Mommies with the maggots now.
Putting it in my cards on the table would fuck the shit out of that mom.
In Deadite form?
In Deadite form.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. She's goth. The Deadites aren't as gross in Evil Dead Rise or in Evil Dead 2013, which is sort of a thing I have a problem with. I like when the Deadite design is more extreme and more like less recognizably human.
Well, 2013 is the only one of these movies, I guess, aside from Rise. I'd have to watch Rise again. 13 is like sort of playing things seriously.
Yeah.
But it also ends with blood literally raining from the sky.
The most blood ever used in a movie. Did you know that? Evil Dead 2013 holds the record.
Yes, I think you told me before.
Oh, yeah. But yeah. No, yeah, and they are both a little bit more serious, but I don't know. I just like those fucking goopy, weird Play-Doh Deadites in the first one and to some extent in this as well.
Oh, yeah, the Henrietta costume is...
It rips.
Revolting.
Yeah. Speaking of things that are revolting, so he fucking goes to get the chainsaw, and I love the chalk outline where the chainsaw should be in the shed, and he's like, "Where's the chainsaw?" And at that exact moment, Linda's fucking decapitated corpse holding the chainsaw runs in. And I like when he gets it away from her and fucking saws the head in half. and it vomits a bunch of black gunk on his face and shit.
Yeah, the shemps in this movie, as they're called,
Yes,
which are
fake shemps. Yep.
fake shemps, are great, and I love the decapitated. I love when it's stuck in the neck stump for a while, and there's just gunk and blood being churned up.
It's so fucking funny. It's so funny because it like I love it coming in with the chainsaw raised, and it immediately him immediately like getting it in the neck, and then it's just it's one of 100 moments in an Evil Dead movie where someone is on top of Bruce Campbell spewing blood all over his face and getting it in his mouth and shit. Yeah, and then when he goes back in the cabin. This is approximately where his hand turns evil.
Yeah. I want to talk about the mirror shot.
Oh yeah,
The mirror shot got me, not like as a jump scare, but as something I wasn't expecting, and it was surprising. I don't know if people know this. Mirror shots to this very day, are some of the most complex and difficult shots in any movie.
Right, because it's like, how do you shoot a mirror without fucking reflecting the camera guy?
And it's not even like, oh, you just digitally paint it. It's like, it's not as simple as that.
Right.
So especially back in the 80s, there were so many tricks that they were using, and it is the actor who is matching Bruce Campbell's movements in the foreground, the double or whatever, is doing such a good job that you don't even think about it or realize it until Bruce Campbell jumps through the mirror.
It's really, really good. Yeah. And this is sort of the introduction of my favorite element of this movie, which is like Ash is losing his goddamn mind.
Yeah.
Because the most insane shit imaginable has been happening to him for an entire movie's worth, right? And we're catching up with him now, and he's just like fucking beyond the end of his rope, right? And so it's like there is sort of this thing where it's like, how much of this is real? How much of this is the Deadites fucking with him? He starts sort of behaving more and more like a Deadite, even though he's not in Deadite Ash form here. And it's just like, that is the shit that to me is like the creme de la creme of this movie, and really of the franchise entirely, is like, how far can we push this guy until he's like indistinguishable from the Deadites?
Yeah, he's it's like the inmates are running the asylum sort of thing.
Yeah,
where he's his world has become so absurd that the only rational reaction that he has to it is to embrace it.
Yes, and to cut off his own hand with a chainsaw.
Oh my god, it's so good. I love that he doesn't even, when his hand starts acting up and trying to kill him, and he's smashing plates on his own head and pulling himself along the floor.
That scene
yeah,
is Bruce Campbell is such a fucking trooper, man, because there are no creative cuts to disguise any of this shit. It is straight up Bruce Campbell picking up dish after dish after dish and smashing them over his own head. He at one point fully fucking aerial somersaults himself. And again, there's no creative cutting. There's no way that they could have faked it.
Yeah, this is just Bruce Campbell throwing himself around this cabin.
He is fucking beating himself to a pulp in this movie.
Yeah.
For our entertainment. And you know what? Thank you, sir.
God fucking bless him.
But yeah, and then like the ground is covered with like, it's littered with broken ceramic. And then Bruce Campbell, acting with one hand, just starts pulling himself across this kitchen floor, dragging his fucking face through all these broken dish pieces. And I was just like, Jesus Christ, what dedication. Like, holy shit.
And the moments in the movie, I think probably before this, when the hand starts becoming possessed, the way he's able to contort and thrash his hand around while doing
a totally different physical performance with the rest of his body.
Yeah, the rest, like, this hand is completely disconnected from him physically. I was trying to do that just like sitting on the couch, like just to see if I could do it. And I was like, no, I can't. I can't do this. Like, he's so committed to this and has thought this out so well.
Yeah, it's really challenging what he's doing, and he makes it look super effortless. Mm-hmm. Like, at no point do you as the viewer not believe that hand is just being controlled by something else, right? It almost looks like it's being puppeteered by something else, but it's like, no, Bruce is just doing that with his hands. you know.
And I love that he just chainsaws his hand off without a second thought.
Yeah.
There's no big debate over it. He's like, no, this thing's gotta fucking go.
Yeah, and the blood hitting his face while he's like laughing and screaming. It's so fucking good.
The anguish that he's going through in this movie mixed with the laughter is so incredible.
Yeah.
The way he's just stretching his face like it's made of Play-Doh, and the way he's able to switch between the maniacal laughter and then also just like a deep sorrowful pain that he's experiencing.
One of the greatest moments is like when he realizes his hand is possessed. For me, like of that piece of his performance, like he realizes his hand is possessed, and really pathetically, like just so broken, he just goes, "Give me back my hand." And then he goes, "Give me back my hand." And it's like it's that, right? He's doing both things in like he says the same line twice, and you get both things where he's like totally broken and it has driven him over the edge. So then he puts his hand under a bucket and puts a bunch of books on top of it, and the top one is A Farewell to Arms.
Very good joke. Good joke, Sam. I like that joke.
It makes me laugh every time.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. And then during this bit, we've been starting to set up the stuff with Annie and Ed where they're coming to the cabin. So we've seen them like get off a plane and be like, explain what their whole deal is and how they're on their way to the cabin to see her dad and figure out the findings from the book or whatever. So we're aware that there's like another kind of plot engine that's like about to converge. But before that happens, probably my favorite scene in any Evil Dead movie happens, which is the extended thing where Ash has a standoff with his own hand. And it's hiding in the wall, and he's shooting at it with the shotgun, and it gives him the finger and all that shit. The hand effects are great, and his performance is amazing. And then a bunch of blood and black goo shoots out of the wall. And then totally, like, defeated and broken from this, he finally goes to sit down on a chair in front of a picture on the wall, or a needlepoint on the wall that says "Home Sweet Home." The chair breaks out from under him like it's a Three Stooges gag, and then the entire cabin starts laughing at him.
Yeah.
Just this bit on its own, this movement on its own, would be one of the best horror short films ever made if you just lifted it out of this movie with no context, right? It's fucking all pitch perfect, like masterful shit.
So this scene where Bruce Campbell gets assaulted with a geyser of blood from the wall and then, sits on a chair and it breaks. This is great screenwriting.
Yes.
This whole movie, I think, really takes to heart that screenwriting rule of there should be a conflict on every page, because so much of this movie is just like these conflict reversals, and it's not an and then plot. It's where every plot beat should have the word because of, or therefore. It is the way that he's interacting with all of these effects and how the Deadites are treating him and what's happening to him. Just this, it doesn't allow him to have a victory for too long.
Right.
Something else happens. Something else gets thrown into the mix.
Yeah, it's not an and then plot. It's sort of a now what plot.
Yeah.
Or a guess what bitch plot.
Yeah. It's also just like you've been bringing up slapstick like Three Stooges, and I mentioned Buster Keaton. It's like Tom and Jerry, Looney Tunes.
Yes. And that is an influence that Sam Raimi has been very vocal about. Sam Raimi loves the Three Stooges. He has been very plain about that in interviews and stuff. So like when Bruce Campbell sits down on that chair and you think, finally, after all of this fucking horse shit, this guy's gonna sit down, and then the chair just breaks out from underneath him. Yes, it's the Three Stooges thing, which also was influenced by and was contemporaries with the Buster Keaton thing, but it evolved into the Monty Python thing and the Mr. Bean thing in the UK. It is that physical comedy thing of like, you're rooting for the protagonist. He's not a guy who you dislike, but the point of the work is to put him in constant misery.
Yeah.
for our delight, for our entertainment, because we're the Deadites, right?
Yeah. So when this movie is just operating on that level and throwing this guy around and introducing all of these new wrenches into things, like it's a Tom Jerry gag where Tom is chasing Jerry and then Jerry pulls a hammer out of nowhere and smacks him in the face.
Yeah.
Like, once we start introducing these new characters into it, and I think these characters are fine and their performances are good, the actors' performances are good, the movie loses that charm for me.
I agree.
There's a version of this movie that I kind of wish we had, which is just 90 minutes of Bruce Campbell in this cabin throwing himself around and fighting off Deadites.
And notably, it's the best part of the first Evil Dead movie, too, when that happens, because the weakest, it's sort of flip-flop from the first movie, because in the first movie, the weakest part is the beginning, when you're doing, like, kind of the standard slasher setup. It's basically the beginning of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, here's our group of doomed teenagers. We kind of don't give a shit about any of them. But then I think it's pretty early in the first Evil Dead movie, which is, it runs about the same length, about like 85 minutes. I think it's like around the 30-minute mark, everybody else dies. And then the rest of the movie is just only Bruce Campbell against all of their reanimated corpses, all of these Deadites who are tormenting him. And it's like, that's when the movie's off to the races. Everything before that is sort of like, okay, this is perfunctory. It's set up. And then once...
Sorry, did you just say perfunctory?
Perfunctory, yeah.
Okay.
Did you not expect a guy wearing an Evil Dead hat to say the word perfunctory?
I don't think I've ever said that word aloud in my life. I said the phrase behoove oneself the other day in front of my parents, and I was like, where the fuck did that come from?
Behoove is a good word. I like perfunctory.
It sounds like a good word to say, and I understand its meaning. Just I don't think I've ever heard, certainly not you, ever say it aloud.
Every once in a while, I got to pull out the vocab words to remind people I was in AP and gifted child classes.
Aw. Nerd.
Yeah, I was smart once. Then I gave all that up to get a theater degree from a state university.
Anyway, sorry for interrupting you with
It's
that
fine.
insult.
It's fine. But yeah, so like it's sort of flip-flopped from the first movie, but in both movies, the best part is Bruce Campbell is in this cabin just getting fucked with by an unseen evil force who delights in causing him misery, right? The thing that is maybe the best example of that is the standoff with the hand. Like, I love all that shit so much.
Yeah.
I like when it gets caught in the mousetrap and he laughs at it and then it gets mad at him.
Flips him off.
And flips him off.
Yeah.
And then when everything in the cabin starts laughing after the chair breaks, like, this I think is where this movie sort of transcends into territory, because it's like, this is goofy, we're having a good time.
Yeah.
There is something about this moment where I'm like, oh, this movie does have a relatively simplistic plot and isn't taking any big thematic swings, and yet there is something deeply existentially unsettling about everything in this cabin laughing at him and him joining the laughter.
Yeah, when he the classic shot of him basically breaking the fourth wall and looking right down the camera and laughing in the audience's face is one of those. But the one that I love is when the little like table lamp starts bouncing, like dipping up and down, and he starts doing it with it.
Yep. And then they both stop at the same time.
Yeah.
And then he goes, ah! And then the lamp it kicks itself back as if in laughter as well. And because he is in sync with this world. He has like integrated himself into this mad evil world, right? Which is what that little moment with the lamp is about. And it's like, first of all, I just think about like the technical stuff that went into the lamp and him had to move in unison and then stop at the same time and then react in the same way after stopping at the same time. And I'm like, that's crazy that
stuff
they
like
did that.
the deer head
man.
laughing,
It
looking
looks so good.
looking so realistic, and then also being able to react in that and to do these rubbery, strange, contorted expressions as it's laughing.
I love that deer head. It's so good.
That's one of those where it's like, I don't know how they did that. I mean, I'm assuming it's just like hand
A
puppet,
yeah.
but it just looks so incredible that you don't even think about it.
Yeah, it looks amazing. Like this whole sequence of cabin madness looks fucking incredible. There's nothing in this section that is one of those effects that you can like poke at and pick apart in this movie. It's all like magic, and it's just it's so effective.
Yeah.
It works so well.
So Annie and Jake and Bobby Joe show up.
Yeah, so
But
like Annie and Ed are the students.
And Ed, yeah.
And then they meet Bobby Joe and Jake on the road, and Bobby Joe and Jake are like, bridge is out, and they're like, is there another way around? And they're like, well, there might be a trail. And Annie's like, well, we'll pay you. And he's like, all right.
So Jake is like classic stereotypical redneck.
Yeah.
And then Bobby Joe just looks like a very pleasant, normal woman. What the fuck is she doing with this hayseed?
Sorry, a pleasant, normal woman. I have to correct you on that, Davy. Davy?
Did you just call me Davy?
I didn't mean to.
I feel like...
I did. It just came out of my mouth that way.
Wow, okay.
It was an accident. I would never call you Davy. I was just thinking about Bobby Joe because, so like, you said she looks like a regular, normal woman. I have to correct you because Bobby Joe is a baddie, which I think is why I said Davy, because I was combining David and baddie. She's a baddie. She's...
oh, you'd hit that?
Easily Bobby Joe is, to me, the most attractive character in any of the first 3 Evil Dead films.
Okay.
Yes.
I sort of feel that way about Annie.
Yeah. See, we got different types.
So I mean, you'll discover this when you read my Letterboxd review.
Oh, I already did.
Okay. She also, in addition to looking like that specific pornographic actress, she also looks like a girl who I had a crush on at the gym, and you know who I'm talking about. She's kind of got that vibe too.
No, you're right.
But just like the blonde variation of that.
Yeah,
I'm really into her.
Well, for me, Bobby Joe is the baddie of this picture, and I was perplexed by her choice in men because yes, Jake does look like he is a lost sibling of the Sawyer family. he looks like he would be grabbing a beer with Chop Top.
Probably the most well-adjusted member of the Sawyer family.
Yeah, right. He'd be like more in the Cook territory where he can like go into town. But yeah, I don't know what Bobby Joe sees in Jake. Maybe he's got a great personality. Maybe he's really funny.
Yeah,
he does look very gross, though.
He is fun though. I do like him. I mean, like I know I'm not into these characters as much as like in this part of the movie as much, but Jake's fun.
I like Bobby Joe's character introduction too, where they're talking about the bridge being out, and Annie asks if there's like some other road around. And you hear from off camera, sure ain't no road. and then it pans, the camera pans over to this woman in a Canadian tuxedo, and she just does an enormous dip spit. It's good character introduction.
Yeah. You know what else is a good character introduction?
Yeah.
They lock Ash in the cellar because Annie's wondering what happened to her
yeah.
parents.
So
she starts playing the tape, and then Ted Raimi in a giant gross fat suit emerges from the earth.
Yeah.
And it's our good old friend Henrietta.
Yes, Ted Raimi acting through so many layers of latex makeup is kind of great in this movie.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Take the word kinda out of there.
Right, no, he's great in this movie.
He's fucking great.
Ted Raimi rules.
He kicks ass in this.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like, and it is, like, a lot of it is a performance. Like, it's not just the makeup and the creature design doing the heavy lifting. Like, you're seeing a lot of Ted Raimi's face, and he's just, like, doing shit with his face and his voice. And it's a really good monster performance. Mm-hmm. Hell yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for this movie only having a handful of Deadites, they really make a good use of making them memorable.
Yeah, Henrietta's like the big bad, right? Like, she's like the heavy of the movie.
Literally.
Yeah. I do like later when it's kind of the final standoff between Henrietta and Ash. I do like how they're adding like floor shaking thump sounds every time Henrietta takes a step. I'm like, all right, this woman isn't that bad. Like, it's not like boom, boom. boom. Like, they make her sound like she's Godzilla when she's walking on this cabin floorboards.
Well, some of those low angle shots of her like her thighs and her calves are like those. When you see those, like, I don't know, I don't want to be an asshole, but those severely overweight people,
Yeah,
driving around Walmart in their carts,
right.
with these giant
She's
fucking,
got Michelin Man legs. Yeah,
like they're
she's a
fucking
big lady.
Christmas hams.
I do think the Deaditification did make her fatter.
Yeah,
Because we see her as a human, and she is not that fat as a human lady.
she's like dead and bloated at this point.
Right, yeah. Her body has been buried in the cellar for less than a week, canonically. But also being a Deadite just, does weird shit to you. I like that when he's when Ash is being chased by Henrietta this first time she emerges here, her face morphs into the weird stop motion snake face.
Mm-hmm.
Basically the first time you see her, which I had forgotten. I thought that was like a third act thing.
Yeah,
But it's like, no, she does that right away.
and I always forget that that's her and not just like another Deadite.
Yeah.
Because that face is very memorable.
It is. It's really good design.
Yeah.
It's very gross and very like weird and uncanny and strange. In the way that the best Deadite designs are. There's a couple like all-timer Deadite designs in this movie. I'll call the other one out here in a second when we get to it. But like Henrietta Deadite emerges, they let Ash out of the cellar because it's gonna fucking kill him. And they also have listened to the tape at this point. Everybody else has listened to the tape and realized that there's demons in the cabin. And so like she pops out and fucking bites Ed, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the eyeball pop. Where
Yes.
I love an eyeball pop in a movie.
And this is, I mean, it's the granddaddy of all eyeball pops.
I don't know if it's the granddaddy, but it's one of the best.
Yeah.
I think I'd have to look.
It it pops out of this fucking disgusting puppet monster's head, flies across the room in a shot where basically they bolted this like eyeball prop, which was like a painted ping pong ball. They bolted it on to the camera. So it's like attached to the camera. And it has a motor in it, so it's moving. And it goes straight into Bobby Joe's mouth.
Yeah.
Fucking rules.
Down the gullet.
They redo this in Evil Dead Rise. And I gotta say, I appreciated the homage, but it is nowhere near as well executed in Evil Dead Rise. Like, it's really, you can't outdo the original.
Anytime an eyeball is flying at the camera, I'm a happy fucking guy.
So fucking good.
It's the best kill in Friday the 13th 3.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you're right. Anyway, so this is where fucking Deadite mayhem really starts breaking loose with the group here, right? Because they had it like there was a little bit of scene setting before with Ash where they were like, did you kill her parents or whatever? Also, I like that the way that all kicks off is like after Ash has his fucking psychotic break, he then hears a noise outside the door and just shoots the shotgun out the door and hits Bobby Joe. We see that he like some of his buckshot has like clipped her shoulder or something. And so he opens the door and like there's no one there. And then huge jump scare when Jake just fucking tackles him and takes him to the ground.
Yeah.
That is the jump scare that made me jump this time, even though I've seen this movie multiple times.
Okay.
Because I forgot about that one. That Jake just barrels into him.
Just lays him out like a linebacker.
Yeah, but I do like that before Jake punches him unconscious, Bruce Campbell gets 3 fucking hooks in on I was gonna say right hooks. That's his only option. He's only got the one. In on Jake before he gets knocked unconscious. But yeah, so like now, like after all the fucking eyeball popping and whatnot, like we're off to the races.
Yeah.
Like, fucking Ed gets turned into a Deadite.
Ed turns into a Deadite.
This is my other favorite Deadite design.
Okay.
I love this Deadite design so much because, like I said, I like when they're like less recognizably human, and Ed's face is like so weird and Halloween masky, and then he's got so many rows of teeth.
I like the rows of teeth.
They go all the way back across the roof of his mouth, and I'm like, that is fucking revolting, and I love it so much.
I like the rows of teeth a lot. But other than that, it is a little too Halloween masky to the point where I completely forgot about him.
Yeah.
I was like, I remember Henrietta. I remember the weird snake head. I forgot that those were the Those were the same. I
Yeah.
remember zombie Ash. I remember the dead girlfriend. I forgot about Ed completely.
Yeah, I really like Ed's character because I like all those nasty rows of teeth. I like his like big long fingers with the super long nails and shit. At one point when he's flying across the room, he kind of like I don't know. He's like doing little witch hands while he's floating across the room on wires or whatever, and it's just like so goofy and weird, and at the same time, like legitimately kind of repellent visually, where you're like, that's fucking disgusting.
I do like that this movie recognizes that, like, we don't want to spend any more time with this fucking block of wood than we need to.
Yeah,
Like, we got our goofy rednecks. We got the hot girl for Ash the hot, smart professor girl
yeah,
for Ash to hang out with. And then this fucking jerk off. Let's just turn him into a Deadite
yes,
right away.
And him and Henrietta do some of the best, just grade A Deadite mocking the people they're about to kill that we see in this series.
Dead by dawn. Dead by dawn.
But the whole line is so good because they're like going back and forth. The two Deadites are yes-anding each other here, and the exchange that they have to taunt Ash and Co. is,
We are the things that were and shall be again, the spirits of the book. We want what is yours, life. Dead by dawn. Dead by dawn.
and then they just start doing the Dead by Dawn chant, and it's it's beautiful because there is something so fun to me about the Deadites specifically, that they are like simultaneously like this ancient primordial evil and also just like fucking little dorks, like little goofy little jerks, you know? And it's like this scene encapsulates that so well. Like the essence of Deadite to me, if someone asked me to explain to them what a Deadite is, I would just show them this scene with Henrietta and Deadite Ed.
Yeah.
Right? And then he floats across the room and grabs a mouthful of hair and eats it. Like it's
Yeah, the Necronomicon is a Lovecraftian concept. That's where it originates from.
Mhm.
So anytime that we're getting these stray lines here and there about how the Deadites are these ancient, immortal, unknowable beings, and we're tapping into a bit, just a dash of that Lovecraftian
yeah.
element is fun.
You can have a whiff of cosmic horror in your Evil Dead movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not even like cosmic horror, because it's not doing anything that cosmic horror does
Mhm.
with those types of characters and those
Eldritch
creatures.
horror, I guess.
Yeah, it's just like we're just going to adapt it because it's cool shit for these characters to say,
right.
but we're
And it's
also going to
also-
make them like evil, demented Looney Tunes characters.
And it's also cooler that if instead of just a regular zombie or a regular demon, you have a demon who has fucking 10 rows of teeth going all the way back in his mouth for some reason, right? Which is like very Lovecraft. It's very much like, yeah, the biology of these things makes no fucking sense because they're like from some other realm. Anyway, here's him getting his fucking head blown off, you know? Yeah, so like they take out Ash takes out Ed very quickly. Like
Mhm.
Ed basically has this one little bit and then he's fucking iced.
yeah.
And
Um,
Henrietta's still trapped in the fucking cellar.
There's a moment where they start hearing noises, and it ends up being the ghost of Annie's father.
This is maybe my least favorite part in this
Yeah,
movie.
the effect. It's kind of like what is it? It's kind of like the inserts that they added of the demon to the Exorcist director's cut.
Yeah, it
with that
does,
makeup.
It does have Pazuzu flash aesthetics. Yeah. It also just looks like a shittier, lower budget version of a Star Wars hologram. Like, it's just like, all right. George Lucas did this better fucking, 10 years ago. It is very help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope ass effects.
The son of Skywalker must not become a Deadite.
One line that made me really laugh for some fucking reason.
Tell me, young Skywalker, have you ever heard the legend of the Necronomicon Ex Mortis? It's not a tale the Jedi would have told you.
Man, now I just want a Star Wars horror movie.
Deadite Star Wars. I feel like the Necronomicon could exist in the Star Wars galaxy.
Star Wars
Why
has
not?
done horror stuff before. Like,
Yeah.
I remember when Death Troopers came out. That was a big deal. The book Death Troopers.
Mm.
I even remember the cover. It's like a stormtrooper head, like helmet with like blood on it, and it was like zombie stormtroopers. That sounds fun. Let's
Yeah.
fucking do that.
Yeah, I know they've dabbled in some of the cartoon shows that I've never watched with like the whole
Yeah.
like, canonical witchcraft thing
Yeah.
in Star Wars, which I feels like there's horror potential there as well.
I think in one of the Clone Wars shows they do stuff with like the Geonosians, basically like becoming zombies and being reanimated in some way.
You know what is a horror adjacent Star Wars thing that I have seen is there's one episode of the 2D animated Clone Wars series
Yeah.
where it's like General Grievous's like character introduction episode, and he fucking ices like a bunch of Jedi at like all at once. And that sequence, like they light it as if it's like as if he's like Jason Voorhees.
Have you seen the video of that synced up to Rasputin?
I absolutely have not, but I definitely should.
It's on YouTube. It's
I'll look
rad
it
as
up.
fuck.
I'll look it up. Anyway, back to Evil Dead.
Evil Dead. There's a line. There's a comedic dialogue here that I really like, where they're hearing the noise before they go into that room, and Ash goes, "Sounds like something's trying to force its way into our world." And then he's like, "Let's go in there together." And then Jake says, what does Jake say? I have it written down here. He says, "Hell no, you're the curious one."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that when Ash and Annie go into the room, they like and see nothing's there. Then immediately Jake and Bobby Joe run up behind him and are like, "We wanted to see what was going on the whole time," because they were just waiting to see if it was safe.
But then the evil hand comes back
Yeah,
because it's holding Bobby Joe's hand, and she's
Jake, you're holding my hand too tight. Baby, I'm not holding your hand.
then Bobby Joe does the worst thing that anyone in an Evil Dead movie can possibly do, which
Especially if you're a woman.
is leave the cabin. If you're a woman in a Sam Raimi Evil Dead movie,
Yes, if you're a woman in an Evil Dead movie, you should not run into the woods.
the tree rape scene from the original Evil Dead,
Yeah, much
is-
more explicit than this one.
It is. She is literally raped by a tree.
Yes.
and it is something that Raimi has expressed some regret over doing.
Yeah.
He felt it was gratuitous.
Gratuitous and exploitative, which
Yeah.
I don't disagree with. That's a movie I love dearly, but maybe we could have not done that.
So I think this is not necessarily like a better version of that scene. It's really, I mean, I don't really know how I feel about
It's
that
less
first scene.
rapey.
It's less rapey, and it's a good way of calling back to that scene and doing something different with it.
Yes.
Where it seems like it's building up to it, where she's like attacked by all these vines, and then we get a lot of close-ups of them crawling over her, and like there's one that's like starting to go into her mouth. We get a close-up of her eye that's very
It's very Texas Chainsaw. Yeah.
But then she's dragged into the woods and is basically killed by being slammed into a fucking tree.
Yeah, it's basically like that thing where like bullies in a school would pick up a kid and ram their nuts into the flagpole.
Mm-hmm.
These trees do that to her at like 70 miles an hour.
I was imagining the aftermath of the attack of on Isengard. I was imagining the Ents doing this to the leftover orcs.
Just slamming them,
Just-
holding their legs open and slamming them on trees.
Is there Ent hentai? You think there's
Hentai?
Hentai? You think there's art of an Ent fucking someone?
Probably. Oh, definitely. You kidding me? You're asking me if someone has drawn an Ent fucking someone? Absolutely. Yes.
Treebeard splitting Merry and Pippin open.
Or something. A warg or something,
Let
maybe.
me open up an incognito tab for a second. Oh, so a lot of sexy lady Ents. Oh, there's one.
Yeah.
There's an Ent fucking a guy.
Oh yeah. Figured that existed.
Cool. Now we know.
Now we know. I told you. I mean, if any species
I needed to know.
if any species exists in Lord of the Rings, there is art of it fucking. Just guaranteed. Just you can take that to the bank. Anyway,
Sorry.
what'd you find?
No, I'm sorry. Just I apologize. I was looking to
Anyway.
We get foreshadowing to Army of Darkness here because the missing pages that Annie has brought talk about there's a hero who went back in time.
Yes.
The hero from the sky, and it's just Ash.
It
with a
literally is
chainsaw.
just Ash with a chainsaw, and he's like, I feel weird looking at that picture. And I'm like, yeah, because it's you, man. It's from 1300 AD, and it's clearly you.
Yeah. So we're getting some backstory.
So since Bobby Joe like goes out in the forest,
Yeah.
Jake is immediately like, I gotta go get my lady. Did you see how out of my league she is? I'm never gonna find one of those again. It's all over for me. So he forces them to go out into the woods.
Mhm.
I love that this movie sort of not dissimilarly to The Guest, a movie that we've already covered on the Halloween Horrorthon, just doesn't do what you expect it to do at any turn, because Ash has not been evil Ash for the rest of the movie since the beginning.
Yeah.
And then Jake makes them go outside, and they go outside and all the evil trees are moving. The effects on the trees are really cool. And you think, oh, it's going to be the three of them against the evil forest, and maybe Deadite Bobby Joe will show up, and that'll be the thing. No. Immediately, when they leave the cabin, Ash just becomes an antagonist of the movie.
Yeah, Annie's kind of the hero of the movie for a minute.
Yeah. It's just so funny that it's like for an hour of this movie, basically, evil Ash has been absent. And then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, if he leaves the cabin, he's evil again. Evil Ash is fun.
Evil Ash is fun. I like it a lot. And I like the design.
Me too.
That's why I think it's a little bit more memorable for me, because so much of it is like there's prosthetics and stuff, but it is much more driven by Bruce Campbell's performance.
Oh yeah. His face is doing a lot under those prosthetics, and it's great.
This is when Annie. Did they allude to this bone dagger earlier in the movie? This fucking Kali Ma ass looking dagger?
I think there's like one line about it, but
Okay.
it's literally like blink and you miss it. This is the magical Deadite killing dagger, which by the way is hilarious because it is never used for that.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to work very well.
No, like it does seem to be the thing that you use to kill Deadites, and then nobody ever uses it to kill a Deadite.
Yeah, she grabs this thing that looks like a fucking prop from a black metal band's stage show.
It looks like a fucking High Lung stage probably. This is what the guy from High Lung is beating that fucking deerskin drum with.
She stabs Jake by accident.
Yeah.
And then Jake gets dragged across the floor and goes down into the basement and basically gets turned into fruit punch.
He's screaming in pain when she's dragging him back into the cabin after accidentally stabbing him, right? So Annie has accidentally stabbed this man, entirely her fault, but also understandable, tensions are high. Then she's dragging him through the cabin, ostensibly to safety, and he is screaming in pain on account of being stabbed in the stomach. And she has the audacity to tell this guy to shut up. He's screaming in pain, and she's like, shut up, shut up, shut up. And I'm like, bitch, you stabbed him.
I mean, he did just threaten to shoot them both with a shotgun.
That's true. That's true. They're not on great terms.
To go run into the rape woods to rescue his girlfriend.
It seemed very impolite to me to yell at a man screaming in pain from a stab wound that you caused to shut up.
The blood here when he gets got by Henrietta, just so much blood gushing out of this thing. It's funny because the rest of the blood in this movie looks like the dark red syrupy blood that you would expect from a movie that's has its effects done by Greg Nicotero,
Yeah.
The blood here is like very just like thin, and
it's like neon red.
Yeah, it looks like fruit punch, and there's like bubbles and stuff coming up.
Yeah. And it rocks.
It's
regardless.
cool. Yeah, it's a rat.
Yeah. And so that's
I love that. I love the thing consistently in the Evil Dead movies where no matter what problems these characters have overcome, no matter what thing they've just defeated, they always have to contend with the Deadite that they have locked in the cellar.
Yes.
Like, that'll always be there.
There's always some fucking little shit down in the cellar being like, you haven't forgotten about me, right? I'm still down here. Yeah. And Jake, in order to get them all to go out into the woods to look for Bobby Joe, did throw the pages down in the cellar.
Yeah.
Before his untimely demise, where he was liquefied into a bunch of red paint. So then Ash turns back normal. He finds the fucking magnifying glass necklace, which is a thing from the first movie.
Yeah, that's what I haven't seen. I didn't rewatch the first one
It's-
before this, but
it's
I
in
figured
the
that's
first movie.
what it was from, and I totally
Yes.
forgot about it.
And it is the stupidest looking necklace of all time.
Yeah.
And so it's even funnier that this is the thing that snaps Ash back to humanity. Because it's like, oh yes, this really shitty necklace I gave my girlfriend is a symbol of my immortal soul. So he overcomes his Deadite-ness and turns back into regular Ash. And then Annie tries to kill him because he's been Deadite Ash.
Yeah.
And I love this little moment. I know we've been talking about how like the best stuff is when Ash is by himself. This interaction with Annie I do love, where she's trying to kill him and he's like, I'm fine now. Like I'm back to normal, see? And he's like being really intense with her because she has an axe and is trying to kill him. But it's like he's doing really good Bruce Campbell face acting stuff where it's like he's really intense, but he also seems really like unthreatening and believable. And it's just it's great stuff from him. And then she seems to like buy it for a second. And he's like, okay, all right, we're good. And then she swings the axe at him one more time and he's like, I told you we're fine.
But
It's
like
great.
to her credit, he is the only person that has come back from being a Deadite.
Right.
And
Yes.
every other Deadite has changed back into a human form at some point and tried to convince that person that they're,
Yes.
you know.
And it is right, and that makes it sort of a pretty smart move on the movie's part too, right? Because it's like you, the audience, are used to seeing Deadites do this, where they turn back into their former human selves and are like, "No, I'm okay. You can trust me," right? And it's like a subversion of the thing that the movie has already established.
Yeah.
Which is it's fun.
So they realize they got to deal with Henrietta. They got to go down and get those pages back.
Yeah.
So Ash does the scene that you remember from this movie where he, gets his shotgun
I
and
was
he
wondering
mounts the chainsaw on his hand.
I was wondering when I was watching this movie this time, because there are some shots where you can tell what they're doing to retrofit this chainsaw to attach to his stump wrist. Like when they're tightening the little collar that holds it on his wrist.
I really don't know how it's hanging on there.
And when they're putting the little chainsaw pull thing, like starts it up on the little harness on his chest, like that stuff, you can all understand the utility of that. Spliced in here, there's also just a bunch of images of like random chainsaw bullshit, and I'm like, I wonder if any of that is actually anything, because even if it's not, it works visually. Like the visual language of like, we're gearing him up to have this chainsaw arm is effective. But I like wonder how much research Sam Raimi did or didn't do about how chainsaws work, and how much of this is real versus him being like, okay, now move that metal piece that way and like put a screwdriver in it.
I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
And it's something that I forget about, because this is the classic. This is what people think of when they think of Ash.
Yeah.
And it's such a small part of this movie. And then even when he goes back in time in Army of Darkness, he loses the chainsaw really quickly.
Yes.
So in total, Ash has been in at least the Evil Dead films. I don't know about the TV show, the Ash versus. Have you ever seen Ash versus
I
Evil
need
Dead?
to watch Ash versus the Evil Dead. I've heard it's good. I haven't seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But as far as the movies, he is Uber Ash, Ash in his final form for a total of like 15 minutes between these two movies.
Which is kind of good in a way, because it's like, I don't know, it's the thing where like you don't want to see the superhero in his suit the whole time. You also want to see him like in being a regular human being, and you know.
But I don't know, when Ash goes back in time of Army of this isn't a slide against this movie. This is a slide against Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
When he goes back in time and it's like, oh, it's Ash in the Middle Ages and he's got a shotgun and a chainsaw and he's gonna fight off these these Deadites.
Yeah.
For him to lose those so quickly, it's like I kind of just want to see him go ham on these guys.
Yeah, that's true. That's kind of what that third movie maybe should have been. But I mean, I like Army of Darkness regardless. But I think it maybe is a better movie if it's just, him versus a whole army of Deadites with his chainsaw and his shotgun.
Yeah, instead of it kind of does like a Seven Samurai thing where he has to train the medieval knights to fight him off. I don't know.
Anyway. A lot of good quotable lines in that movie, such as "This is my boomstick," which this movie sets the groundwork for in this scene by having him get geared up with a chainsaw and then go, "Groovy."
Yep.
Which rocks.
Yep.
It's groovy. It's the Evil Dead 2 groovy. It is what it is. And what it is the best single word delivery by any actor in a horror movie of all time.
Okay, I'd have to think about that.
I don't know. I
noticed this time that the shot's out of focus.
Yeah,
it's sort of out of focus, which I think is funny.
They didn't expect you to watch it on Blu-ray when they made it.
You know what else I noticed? When he goes down into the cellar,
yeah,
there's a Freddy Krueger glove hanging on the wall,
which apparently was the actual Freddy Krueger prop glove.
Okay.
From Dream Warriors, which was filming at the same time.
Okay,
is what I read. I think like Greg Nicotero or somebody on the effects team like had a buddy or was working themselves on the Dream Warriors at the same time, and they just like snagged the glove for a day and put it in the shot as like a little Easter egg.
I was gonna ask you, since you know a little bit more about this movie than I do, did they shoot this at the same cabin? Because I know the cabin has since been destroyed.
I don't think so. I could be wrong about that. Because some of my research about this movie I didn't do immediately before this episode. I've like absorbed it over the course of several years. If I'm remembering correctly, they had to recreate it.
Okay.
Because they didn't have access to the same cabin, I think.
Yeah.
Also, the cabin interiors in this movie are fucking crazy. Where there's when Ash is being chased by the evil force around sunset and trying to avoid being possessed again earlier in the movie, it chases him through the cabin, and it's a continuous shot, just the camera following Bruce Campbell through the entire like layout of this cabin. And it is a thing that I love to see in horror movies, which is like insane geography that seems to not make logical sense, because the cabin seems bigger on the inside than it is on the outside.
Yeah, definitely.
When the entity is chasing him through it. And it like goes through, like at one point it like there's this curtain that goes into the drywall, and then you're just like in the wall and it's like exposed insulation and shit. It's crazy. It's the floor plan of this thing is nuts. So I'm sure that the interior location that they used is something different than the exterior shots.
Yeah, almost definitely, because I know the cellar is a lot bigger and more detailed than it is in the first movie.
Right, totally.
So they go down to the cellar, and basically Ash has to fight off Henrietta.
He finds all the pages. He finds Jake's dead body that has had all the skin stripped off of it, which is a fun little jump scare. This scene is actually before Henrietta shows up. I remembered it from previous watches, and even on this watch when I knew what was going to happen, like I knew Henrietta was under those stairs, it's really effectively tense.
Yeah.
In a way that I think this movie gets a lot of credit for how funny and balls to the wall it is. I also think this movie's like pretty effectively scary, maybe less than the first one.
I think this is tense in a way that the rest of the movie isn't.
Yeah,
honestly.
that's true.
This part.
Yeah, but it's like one of the scariest moments of the movie, and it's like you're waiting for something to happen for a really long time.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like I appreciate seeing that movie dip into that mode, you know, where it's like, okay, now we're going to like pump the brakes and do a long extended set piece where you're just waiting for shit to go insane again.
Yeah. And Henrietta pulling him through the staircase, and he gets like caught
and
in
Ted
the stairs.
Raimi goes, come here.
God, that's so good. And then the image that I remember from this movie of like the most like iconic Deadite image is Henrietta spinning, floating in the air above Ash, and we just see the this giant grotesque latex suit that Ted Raimi has on
with actual sweat dripping out of it
Yeah.
because Ted Raimi was fucking boiling in there. Yeah. So like Henrietta, flies out of the cellar. Ash has been like temporarily knocked out or whatever, and Henrietta is like terrorizing Annie for a little bit. And then like Ash comes back and is like, he has a big heroic moment where he whistles to get her attention. I love him whistling to get her attention. And then Henrietta turns around and is like, bah! Just a great little Deadite moment.
the snake neck thing comes back.
Yes.
We get the stop motion. It's sort of like really like Jason and the Argonauts style of
Yes.
like
In a
him
way-
fighting the stop motion
in a
snake
way
neck
that-
Henrietta.
In a way that doesn't look
No.
convincing or realistic, but I think fits the movie's tone, and I can accept the visual effect looking imperfect because stylistically it fits into the world.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
think so.
Yeah.
And I feel that way about the Deadite that they kill at the end of the movie when they go back in time,
Mm-hmm.
where it's this like, really rough looking optical effect.
Yeah.
And then when he shoots it and it blows apart, it's like, no, they built like a real nice big looking prop that they blew up with
Yeah.
these great K&B effects.
Yeah. So he is losing to Deadite Henrietta, and then Annie distracts it by singing "Hush, Little Baby" or whatever the fuck,
Yeah.
which is so funny that
It's
like,
funny that comes back.
It's funny that is like their thing in their character relationship. It's like, oh, this is me and my mom's thing, is that she used to sing me the most popular lullaby of all time. And that's the thing that brings her mother back from demonic possession for enough time for Ash to get the upper hand, is like, hey, remember when you sang me literally the first lullaby if you Google lullaby? Yeah, so then Ash fucking dismembers Henrietta, and we get the great
Swallow your soul.
Yeah.
Swallow your soul.
swallow this.
Yeah.
And he fucking blows this thing's head up with
Yep.
a shotgun. Fucking owns.
Mhm.
It's great. And then like so so Annie has read part of the incantation, because the incantation is like there's two, and one is to make the evil force manifest itself physically, and the other one is to open a portal that will suck the evil force through to some other point in space and time. She has only said the part to make it manifest physically, and before she tells Ash this, they like embrace and have a little moment.
Yeah, they're just about to like kiss,
And then trees start attacking the house, and she's like, oh shit, I didn't say the part where I send it back into the portal. And his reaction is like, wait, what? Which I'm
I
like,
have business with Ash tonight with rock and stone.
yes, the Ents,
The
Ents-
last march of the Ents.
the march of the Ents march to the Evil Dead cabin. The Ents and these Deadite trees, I wonder what the relationship between the two would be. I kind of think that like the Evil Dead trees would just be like kind of weird, like kinky outcasts in Ent society.
Oh yeah, they're the freaks.
Yeah, these are like goths in Ent society, is just like these Evil Dead trees.
I feel like the Ents would win in a fight, though. I feel
definitely.
like the Ents would wipe the floor with the Evil Dead trees.
Yeah, absolutely. These Evil Dead trees, I mean, they're not throwing boulders. They're just kind of like limply smacking their branches against,
Yeah.
siding.
Although whatever the fuck comes through that cabin door at the end of this movie,
Yeah. Well, that's the manifestation of evil.
Which
that's
is
the thing
rad.
that it makes it physically manifest itself, which is like where we're at. Like,
Yeah.
so like the camera has been doing the entity vision throughout the film, as Evil Dead films are wont to do. It does it here and flies into the doorway, except this time there's a giant puppet face because she read the incantation that made it manifest itself physically. And this thing's fucking gnarly as hell. It looks like a skinned like it's just muscle
yeah.
and on a skull with these big buggy like snake eyes and like a million teeth that are all like sticking out at weird angles. It kind of has like shark teeth. It's fun.
It's fun as hell. And I also love Annie gets stabbed while she's reading the incantation. She
By
gets
the hand,
stabbed
the hand comes
stabbed
back.
by Ash's hand is still fucking around in this cabin. Stabs her with the bone knife.
I kind of think that Ash's possessed hand is the main antagonist of this movie.
Oh yeah, if this was again, like if this was 90 minutes of Ash just fighting off alone by himself, it would be the best Evil Dead movie. I think it would be even better if it was just Ash versus his own hand
Ash be his own hand
for the whole runtime.
Yeah. The hand gets the assist here and fucking stabs Annie in the back. And she's like trying to read the incantation while she's dying, trying to finish it. One of the trees like grabs Ash and starts delivering him to the giant evil mouth. And I love him plunging the chainsaw in the fucking giant face puppet's eye and a bunch of blue goop shooting out.
Yeah.
Blue is a color we hadn't gotten yet in this movie. We've gotten red goo. We've gotten black goo.
There's probably some green in
There's
here.
green when he's killing Henrietta. Henrietta is bleeding green goo. And then, here we get some blue goo. So, it's an Evil Dead movie. We got to goo it up.
Yeah, very gooey movie.
Oh, yeah. They all are. The final set piece of the first Evil Dead is sort of my favorite overall Evil Dead gooining, where all those stop motion Deadites fucking like decompose and then the huge hands shoot out of them and then they like rot in very weird ways. Like one of them kind of turns into oatmeal.
Yeah. When I watched that the first time, that was the point of the movie where I was like, okay, what the fuck am I doing watching this?
That's my favorite part of the first Evil Dead movie.
I think those were like the cheapest looking effects to me.
I love it.
But
I love it so much.
I mean, I like the movie. I've seen it again, so I like it now. Is this one between 1 and 2? Which one's gooier, do you think?
I think overall 2 is probably gooier, but 1 has the gooier final set piece. Like the last 10 minutes of 1 are gooier than the last 10 minutes of 2, but I think overall goo per minute we're higher in Evil Dead 2.
Okay.
Yeah. It would be my guess. And then probably Army of Darkness I would assume is the least gooey one.
It's definitely the least gooey.
But Evil Dead 2013 is probably the gooeyest, given that there is full-on blood rain at the end of that one. There's also a lot of puking in Evil Dead Rise. Tons of puking in that movie. Anyway.
Yeah.
But there's blue goo when he stabs the eyeball.
Mm-hmm.
And then
portal opens.
Yes, because Annie, with her dying breath, says the last word of the incantation.
Yeah. And it gets sucked through the portal. And
a Monster Squad portal, you might say.
And then he lands in Army of Darkness.
And Ted Raimi opens his night helmet.
Yeah.
And is like, hey, I get to actually show my real face in this movie for 2 seconds. And he's like, the hero is here to save us from the Deadites. And I love that all of these knights... First of all, this is a fucking insane way to end a movie.
Yeah.
It's a crazy way to end a movie. To send your protagonist back to the Middle Ages.
Was he already planning Army of Darkness at this point?
He wanted to make Evil Dead 2 Army of Darkness. So he wanted the second Evil Dead movie to be Ash goes back to the Middle Ages and fights Deadites back then.
Okay.
Dino De Laurentiis was producing it. And Dino De Laurentiis was like, I'm smoking my huge cigar. You cannot have an Evil Dead movie in the Middle Ages. I give you no money.
You gotta do it again. You gotta do the first one again.
Do the cabinet thing.
I give you $3.5 million. Go fuck yourself. Yeah.
Yes. So that's what it was. It was basically Dino De Laurentiis was like, that's too weird. You can't do it. The only way I will pay for this movie is if you do something more normal.
Yeah.
And then Sam Raimi actually used the success of Darkman, which he made after Evil Dead 2.
I've always wanted to see Darkman.
Darkman was very commercially successful, and he used the commercial success of Darkman to actually eventually get Army of Darkness made. Army of Darkness was like a huge passion project that he had been wanting to do since the first Evil Dead.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, like, that's why it's woven in so hard into this movie, is because he always knew he wanted to make Army of Darkness.
Okay.
Deadites in the Middle Ages was apparently a thing that he always just was raring at the bit to do.
I think that's the key to a lot of these horror movies is, like, just set it in a different time period.
Yeah.
It took Predator so fucking long to learn that.
Yeah, and Prey fucking rocks.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Like, just do that.
Yeah.
Send, you sent Jason into space. Why not send him back to the Middle Ages?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know what I've always wanted? Predator samurai movie. Predator in feudal Japan.
Yeah.
Predator fighting samurai.
The Predator really kind of is unique in that he can do the Assassin's Creed thing.
Yeah.
Where you can just drop him in any historical conflict and be like, now the Predator is here.
That was it's taken them so long to finally unlock it.
Yeah.
They were going to do it.
Yeah.
In Predator 3. Like the end of Predator 2, Danny Glover gets this fucking pirate pistol.
Yeah.
And it's like, where the hell did this come? Because the Predators were like, oh, you did good. We give you a trophy. Fucking take this fucking shitty old pistol. And that Predator, that pirate pistol was going to lead into Predator 3, which was Predator versus Pirates.
Dude, oh man, why have they not made that yet? Like
I don't fucking know.
I know Prey, because it's like kind of early European colonization of the Americas, is basically the same time period.
I think they retrofitted that pistol to be in the Prey movie.
Yeah, it's like one of the French fur trappers. God,
Yeah.
The fucking Predator in that movie killing all those French fucks is so good. But like, man, Predator versus Pirates would have been a home run.
Yeah.
Also, just put the Necronomicon on a pirate ship. You know? I do like that for Evil Dead, with Evil Dead Rise, they did eventually, sort of like Prey, realize, oh, the Necronomicon can just be somewhere. Like, it doesn't have to be a cabin in the woods. Because they had done Cabin in the Woods for 1, 2, Army of Darkness is its own thing, right? Where we're like, oh yeah, Deadites in medieval era. But then 2013 was like a straight up Cabin in the Woods style remake. And then with Evil Dead Rise, they were like, no, yeah, like it's just an apartment in Los Angeles and the Necronomicon can just be there. Like it literally doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping we get some more inventive Evil Dead movies, because I think this franchise still has gas in the tank.
I think so too.
And it's like, if the Necronomicon just shows up, you know, give me a fucking group of hikers hiking in the Swiss Alps and they find the Necronomicon. Like, let's see what that looks like. Or let's, you know, someone buys it from a street market in, you know, Amsterdam. And now we have Deadites in fucking Amsterdam or some shit.
Oh, I was just thinking like Victorian England.
Yeah, there you go.
like Jack the Ripper.
Right, especially if these things are supposed to be ancient. Like, yeah. Let's fuck around with the timeline a little bit. Like, let's get some Deadites going on, and yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Anyway,
let's get Churchill v. Deadites.
These Deadites.
We shall fight them on the beaches. we shall never surrender.
My fellow Britons, we must remain strong in the face of the Deadite threat.
Yeah.
Or just put in the Old West. That's always like my like. Just give me Cowboys.
Cowboy Deadites would
Cowboy Deadites.
Anyway,
That's Evil Dead 2. Before we get to our verdicts, I forgot to bring this up.
Yeah.
I just wanna cross this off the list, and then we can move on to our verdicts. Evil Dead 1, amazing, great illustrated poster that is iconic, that is entirely unique.
Yeah.
Army of Darkness, great sort of Drew Struzan style, heroic illustrated poster. Evil Dead 2, a skeleton with eyes photoshopped onto its head,
giving you the side eye,
and it's somehow the most I feel like it's the most iconic Evil Dead image. I fucking hate it.
You hate the poster?
I really hate the poster.
Wow, I kind of love the poster.
You do?
I kind of think it's one of the best horror posters. I think it's a great poster.
God, I think it's atrocious in comparison to the other two of this trilogy.
I do think the other two posters exhibit more artistry. I think the Evil Dead 2 poster, like, really fits the vibe of the movie, because it's just like a skull giving you side eyes and looking like it's a little stinker. And I don't know, it feels like it fits to me.
Okay.
I do agree that the other ones are like more impressive works of art.
Yeah.
But I like the Evil Dead 2 poster. I think it like really it lets you know what you're in for, I think.
Okay.
Personally.
Yeah, I think it sucks.
You're allowed to hate it.
Justice.
Yeah.
Do you hate Evil Dead 2? Or is it the greatest movie ever made?
David, I mean, yeah, Evil Dead 2 is the greatest movie ever made. I sort of tipped my hand on this at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I don't hate this movie. I love this movie. Like I said, I think the bit towards the beginning with Ash by his lonesome going nuts in the cabin is some of the best shit in a horror movie. I love this franchise. I love the Deadites. I fucking love Bruce Campbell. I love Sam Raimi. You know, we talked about all the reasons it rules and how well made it is, and it's, in addition to all of that, it's just a fucking great time. Like, it's hard to think of another horror movie that is more of just a straight up balls to the wall good time than Evil Dead 2. And I think that's not by any stretch of the imagination, a controversial statement for a horror fan to make.
Yeah,
I
it's called Peter Jackson's Brain Dead.
Well,
Justice.
yes, that's right. Yes. And I do like this movie less than Peter Jackson's Brain Dead, and I also like it less than Evil Dead 1981, its predecessor. However, I like it enough to definitely say it's the greatest movie ever made. It's a fucking ball. What a ball this movie is. David, is Evil Dead 2 the greatest movie ever made?
Justice.
Yeah.
I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to say because I think the original Evil Dead is better than this. I think Evil Dead 2013 is better than this.
Yeah, depending on the day, I might honestly agree with that one too.
I'd have to watch it again.
Yeah.
And again, this is the only one that I've watched in preparation for this episode. I think Brain Dead is a better Evil Dead movie than all of the Evil Dead movies, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
I love the 30 minutes of this movie that is Bruce Campbell just committing to the bit harder than anyone has ever committed to the bit for our entertainment. Just him putting himself through hell for our pleasure.
Yeah.
The rest of it has a lot of fun, has a lot of really fun effects and good moments in it. I wish it got back to that really high peak that it sets up earlier in the movie. So the greatest movie ever made is a movie that is so thoroughly entertaining and compelling that while you're watching it, it's the only thing that matters in the world. I don't necessarily think Evil Dead 2 is that, and I don't think I had that experience while watching it today. But talking about it with you and all of the things that I love about this movie and all of the filmmaking techniques that I love that this movie showcases, and just like it's just such a fun 90 minutes. It's such a good time. Even though, like, intellectually, I don't think it necessarily is the greatest movie ever made. Yeah, I'll give it a like greatest movie ever made. I don't
Yeah.
want to. It's just fucking great. Like
When it's a Raimi picture, you got to go with your heart, not your head, man. We learned this on the Spider-Man episode.
yeah, it's a great time.
Yeah.
It's maybe if I had to rank all of our greatest ever movie ever made, it might be on the lower end of that list.
Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah,
Good fucking time.
I couldn't in good conscience give Reanimator a yes and not this movie.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because I think Reanimator is a similar type of movie, but I kind of think this movie is funnier than Reanimator a lot of the time. And also, no shade to our dearly departed Stuart Gordon, but I think Raimi is a more skillful and adept filmmaker.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get Reanimator without this. We don't get Brain Dead without this. We
definitely don't get Terrifier without the Evil Dead movies.
We don't get From Dusk Till Dawn. We don't get so many of these like fun gore-filled horror comedies.
Yeah.
And Evil Dead 2, I think, is regardless of whether it's better than Evil Dead 1, I think Evil Dead 2 might be more important.
Right.
Also, I didn't even bring this up yet, more important to death metal. How many fucking death metal bands from this period have written a song about Evil Dead? Fucking Deicide, Death, like it's just like
the cultural impact kind of can't be overstated.
I think it really can't be overstated with this one, and I think that is factoring into my verdict. So yeah. I'll give it a light yes.
Hell yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like it would have been underwhelming if it had been a no when the month is named after this movie.
True. What are we talking about next week to close out?
Next week, David, we are talking about a film directed by the incomparable Robert Zombie. Our first Rob Zombie film. And it is not any of the ones that you think it might be. It is The Lords of Salem. We're not talking about his Halloween. We're not talking about any of those Firefly family movies. Instead, it's the weird one. Gonna be a real fun time talking about Lords of Salem.
This will be my first time with this.
Yeah,
I'm very interested with it. Very interested to see it and talk with you about it and hear what you enjoy about it so much.
Yeah, it's a real trip, man. So it's sort of like I can say this without spoiling anything. It is the most clear that Rob Zombie's love of David Lynch has ever been in his filmmaking.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So join us next week for The Lords of Salem. In the meantime, please leave us a review. Help us grow this show. And tell your friends about it and all that delicious shit. I don't know why I said delicious there. Anyway.
Especially when you followed it with shit.
Yeah.
Delicious shit. That's some fucking Deadite freak shit.
I don't know, man. All right, let's end this fucking episode.
All right.
We love you so much. And as always, later, Deadites!
It's almost time, kids. The clock is ticking. Be in front of your TV sets for the Horrorthon.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Greatest Movie Ever Made. Please remember to leave us a rating and a review, and to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. We appreciate you supporting the show and spreading the word. Tell your friends to listen, tell your enemies to listen, tell your mom to listen. If your neighbor has an unsecured Bluetooth speaker, connect to it and play an episode. You can follow us on social media at TGMEM_podcast, and if you've got a movie that you want us to talk about, send us an email at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com. Okay, that's all for now. We hope you beautiful people all come back next week for another episode.